same quiz. Should you be able to do better on this one than the last one if you didn't do well on the last one? Hopefully. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this. Got to start knowing how to label and what symbols to use and everything on each one of these. Name me a line in this picture. Say it again. NB. NT. Can I just write it that way? Gotta have the line symbol, 2 letters in the symbol, about array. Just that way? Symbol. How about a segment? Making sure you have the symbol. 2 letters on all 3 of those. Name a plane. Don't name it plane B. Make sure you're right now. We're playing.
Pardon me, teachers, for the interruption. At this time, I need all remaining freshmen to please come down, have a picture taken. Thank you.
Is that what you said was an ORM? Is that what you said? 3 collinear points. Remember on these, commas between them. No commas up in any of these. Commas between them so that we know the difference. And I'm not going to solve this one again. Anybody remember what the answer was from last time? On page 47, instead of me walking around and checking it this time, what we're going to do is we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 7 problems there. We're going to do them together extremely quickly. So have out your calculators. If you need a calculator, grab one. Again, start getting your calculator if you don't have your own yet, because I think now there's like 8 in my box up there. Yeah, we started with 12. So we've lost how many?
5.
Close. 12. 8. 4. We were only a couple weeks in, and we've already lost 4. So if we were to extrapolate that out, about 6 weeks from now, how many calculators are going to be left up there?
0.
And then you're going to be out of luck. So get your own. We're going to do these together. Have out your calculators so you can help me. We're going to run through them extremely quickly. The way you're going to get a grade for this assignment is the stuff that I write up here, you're going to write on your paper. And then when we're done, you're going to turn it in. Does everybody understand that? So if you're not writing down the stuff as I'm writing it down, and then you turn it in and you just have the answers written down, out of luck. No credit. All right? So, got to write stuff down. On the first one, find point X on segment AB if it's 1/5 of the distance from A to B. So what point are we starting at?
-5.
All right, so I'm going to label these and label it on your paper there. What's this? Get -5, get labeled. X, 1, and this is Y1. Ignore the stray marks. There's going to be several of those if I'm writing on the picture. What's this going to get labeled? X2, Y2. Jeez, that's horrible. So I'll probably quit doing that. Can everybody understand what that's supposed to say?
Yeah.
And give me 1 second here because my stuff is way off.
Find a nice little name.
Our formula is still written up here. This one, if we're using fractions. This one, if we're using a ratio. Remember, I only wrote half of it up here because the other half is exactly the same. Just take out the x's and put in what? y's. Nothing hard about it, so let's do that real quick. So to find our x's, for our x's. Put it, 01, you see 01 up there in the tray? Thank you, Joey. Good luck tonight. What's our x1? This is the part you should be writing down. -5 plus, what's our fraction? 1/5, parentheses, what's our x2? Minus, what's our x1? -5, what's gonna happen there? It did say minus and -5, but then we changed them both into what? Correct. Grab your calculators, type all that in. One of my classes I figured out the other day, we were getting the wrong answer. Some of you may have to on some of your calculators, instead of just typing in -5 plus 1 divided by 5 parentheses, 2 plus 5 parentheses, you may have to type in a times sign in between the fraction and the parentheses. -3.6, Sawyer said. Anybody agree with that?
Yes.
If you're not getting that on your calculator, please let me know so that we can figure out how to tell you to punch it in. Is that our answer? We done? No, you gotta do the same thing for the y's. For the y's, what's our y1 this time? -5 again. Plus 1/5. Parentheses, what's our y sub 2? 9 minus, ignore that, minus a -5 again, right? What's gonna happen with the 9 minus a -5? Make them both plus. Good. Sawyer's saying -4.2, anybody get that?
He's trying to make sure he gets full credit. I got negative.
Say, I don't know, -4.2, that seems awful.
Seems a little high.
Yeah.
I got -2.2.
-2.2, is that what we're going with?
Yes.
Did you didn't put in plus and negative, did you?
I did, but that's what I did for the first one.
No, you shouldn't have. Did everybody, was -3.6 okay? Cause now he's saying he did the same thing for.
I got 3.6 for the first one.
Negative, so we're all right there? So what's our answer on this one? Remember, we need a point. So -3.6, -2.2. Should have all that written down there on your paper. That's your answer. Let's look at it real quick. -3.6 tells me to go out to the left, not about 3.5, somewhere about in here. -2.2 tells me to go down, and we're going by 2's on this graph, so -2.2 would be somewhere about right in there. Yes. Somewhere about in there. Does it look like it about falls on our segment somewhere? Yeah. Next one, X's for number 2. Let's label them first. I don't even want to, I hate to write on here because it's going to be all nasty. We're starting at what point? J. So this is X1. Hey, if I'm careful, maybe it'll work. And the 4 is the Y1. The 5 is X2. The -3 is the y2. Ah, it worked for a second, didn't it? I messed up on me again. For our x's, what's our x1? -1 plus, what's our fraction this time? 1/3. Our x2, x1, -1. Type all that into your calculator. Again, make sure you write down the work. Don't just write down the answers, I won't give you credit. I know, Mr. Farno, it's a lot for me to ask for you to write down all that work, isn't it? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers there. God, Ebersole, that's write down 5 numbers. Anybody get an answer on this one?
I got
1.6 repeating. Anybody else get that? Yes, no, maybe?
Or did you just say 1.6?
I just got past that.
Oh, for the first.
One? Is that what we're going with? Just one? Is that what it is? Anybody else get one?
Yeah.
Is that not what you got, Jake?
No, that's not your idea.
For the y's. What's our y sub 1? Fractions 1/3 again, y sub 2.
And -3.
Minus y sub 1, 4. Type all that into your calculator. What anybody get?
I got negative, I mean, 1.6 repeating.
So what is that 0.6 repeating? 1 and, what is a fraction, 0.6 repeating? You need to start recognizing that when you plug it into your calculator. If you got that 0.6 repeating, what is it as a fraction? 2/3. What's our final answer here on number 3? Oops, ignore that. I'm gonna redraw it. What's our final answer on number 3? 1 is our x. 1 and 2/3 is our, you guys didn't say it was a negative, was it? Was it a negative?
No.
No? Alright. Let's see, if I go out 1, up 1 and 2/3, looks like it's about right there. Does that look like it's gonna fall on our segment?
Yeah.
Next one, number 5. This time, instead of a fraction, we have a ratio. In this ratio, the 2 is what letter? That's your M, the 1 is the N. We're gonna use this formula, again, gotta use it twice. First thing we need to do here is, we're going from what point to what point? We're going from D to, yeah, we're going from, it says, find the point on CD such that the ratio of dy to yc, so we're starting at D and going to C, so somebody help me out. What's the coordinates? Ignore that. What's the coordinates for point D? Count them up there on your paper.
10, -1.
Anybody agree with Drew on that? 10, -1? Terrible. Draw my pen. How about C? What's the coordinates for C? Say it again. Everybody agree with that? 2, 2?
Yeah.
Can everybody read that 10, -1? Is that all right? So we're starting at D, going to C, so the 10 is your x1, the -1 is your y1, the 2 is your x2, and that's your, oops, no, another x, that's your y2. So we're just gonna use this formula this time because we're using the ratios. What's n? 1. One. What's x1? 10. Plus, what's m? What's x2? And all that divided by 2 plus 1. Remember on this, do the top first, so type in the top into your calculator. What do you get on top? Everybody agree with 14? Type in the bottom, you don't have to type it in. What's 2 plus 1? 14 divided by 3, is it gonna come out all nice and even? Comes out 4.6, repeating again, so it's 4 and what? What did we just say?
2/3.
2/3. 4 and 2/3, better way to write that. That was for your x's, now we gotta do your y's. Do the y's the same way. You have a question? Where at? No, where? Tell me.
I got all this down.
So that's your x coordinate, all right, so we're only halfway done. Is that where you confused that, or you confused how we got the 4 and 2/3?
No.
Confused how we got to 14?
No, I was confused.
All right, so,
I mean, I got it all written down.
all right, so watch on this one, because we're gonna do the same thing for the y's, all right? So for the y's, instead of x's here, we're gonna put in y's. Our n is 1, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Our y1, what's our y1 this time? -1 plus our m is 2. What's our y2? It was 2 also, wasn't it? All that over, on the bottom we got m plus n, 2 plus 1. I'll tell you the bottom is still 3. Anybody get the top yet?
3.
3? Is that what we're going with? And then what's 3 divided by 3? Now to finish it up, we gotta write our point. Write it as an ordered pair. What's our x coordinate?
4 and 2/3.
4 and 2/3. What's our y coordinate? Let's see if I go out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2/3. That's gonna be about somewhere right about in there. Up 1. That's gonna end up somewhere right about in there. Does that look like it falls on that segment that we were dealing with? And again, we were splitting the segment up so that 2 parts are on this side, 1 part on that side. Does it look like that part right there is about twice as long as that part there? Yeah, pretty close. That's why you're getting confused, because you're just so in shock or in awe of the squiggly lines going everywhere. Want to see some more? I'm watching.
It's like the name of the hospital, which one, whatever it's called.
See, I don't want to say anything bad here,
You know what I'm talking about then?
but I better shut up.
Something like that.
KG. Number 9, find the point W on UV that is 1/7 of the distance from U to V. First thing we gotta do on number 9, find those coordinates, U and B. I'm gonna write it over here, then I'm probably gonna have to erase it. Number 9. How about point U? What's the coordinates for point U?
2, 4.
Close.
2, -4.
2, -4. How about for point B? What is it? 4, 3. Everybody agree with that? Now we gotta go back to this formula, because we have a fraction. This is our x1. Ignore that. This is our y1. This is our x2. This is our y2. What's x1? Plus our fraction. What's our fraction for number 9? Now, as soon as I see a fraction 1/7, I'm guessing that our answers are probably gonna come out crazy decimal, so we're probably gonna have to round them off. All right? What's our x2? 4 minus our x1 was 2. Put all that into your calculator. If it doesn't come out all nice and even, again, I don't want you, the stuff like the 0.6 repeating and the 0.3 repeating. I want you to know that 0.6 repeating is what is a fraction? 2/3. That's an easy fraction. So you should write that down, not round it off. But on something like this one, where it's not gonna be an easy fraction, then go ahead and round it off. What did it come out to be? 2.3?
Yeah.
Everybody agree with that? Now we do the same thing for the y's. What's our y sub 1? Our fraction is 1/7 again. What's our y sub 2?
3.
Y sub 1? -4. What's gonna happen there with minus a negative?
Plus.
So change that to plus. Type that into your calculator, figure it out. All this stuff easy, so I'm just wasting my time. I should have went on and Meadow, I thought we had to talk last time. Shh. Talk too much.
Yeah.
What'd you get for this one?
-3.
-3. Anybody else get that?
Yeah. Yes.
Then our answer, what's our x coordinate? 2.3. What's our y coordinate? Write that down. I'll give you a second to write. Make sure you got all that written down. I'm going to erase it so I can do number 11. My pen only messed up once on that whole slide.
Yeah, there's a mess of like 30 more times.
Problem.
Where did it mess up?
Number 11 says find the point Z on RS such that the ratio of RZ to ZS is 1:3. So what point are we starting at? R. So somebody help me out. What's the coordinates for point R? -1, 1. Write that down on your paper. And what's the point that we're ending at? S. And what's the coordinates for point S?
7.
Everybody agree with 7-2? This time we're doing a ratio instead of a fraction, so we're gonna use this one. N is your M, 3 is your N. So if I'm doing the X's first, let's label this. This is X1, that's Y1, that's X2, that's Y2. What's our N this time? 3, ignore that. What's our X1? -1 plus, what's our M? 1, what's our X2? And all that divided by 1 plus 3. Type the top into your calculator. Four on top, anybody else get 4 on top? Ignore that going up through there. 1 plus 4 is 4, 4 on bottom. So what's 4 divided by 4? We're gonna do the same thing for the Y's. For the Y's, when you're doing the ratio one, it's easy because everything in it stays exactly the same except for those 2 things in the parentheses. Everything else stays exactly the same. And you just gotta put in Y1 and Y2. What's Y1 this time? What's Y2? Type all that top into your calculator. I'll tell you the bottom is gonna be 4 again. Five on top, anybody else get 5?
Yeah.
Is that gonna come out all nice and even? 1 1/4. You could write it as 1 1/4. This one, I don't mind if you write it as a decimal. What's 1/4 as a decimal? 1.25, whichever one you're more comfortable with. It doesn't matter to me. Hopefully you know, if you see 1.25, that's the same as 1 1/4. And if you see 1 1/4, you know it's the same as 1.25. What's our final answer here?
1.
May a speech bubble.
I was wondering who was gonna say that. I figured it'd be Jacob, but
Which one?
Jacob R.
No. It's Mo.
On this one, Layla is walking from the park at point P to the restaurant at point R that's on the back of the page. She wants to stop for a break when the distance she has traveled and the distance she has left to travel is 3 to 5. At which point should Layla stop for her break? So, they already give us the things up here, but I'm gonna rewrite them over here. She's starting at point P. What was the coordinates for point P? 10-3. And she's walking to point R, is that right? And that was 0-4, is that correct?
Yeah.
So this is our X1, that's our Y1, that's our X2, that's our Y2. Which one of these 2 formulas are we using this time? All right, so this is your M, that's your N, so 3 is your M, M is 3. I'm gonna write down here since I just messed it all up there. N is 5. What's our N this time?
5.
Times, what's our X1?
10.
This one's nice because no what in it. What kind of numbers aren't in this? Negatives. That's what makes it nice, right? Makes it so easier. What's our N this time? 3. Or our M, I'm sorry. 3. And what's our X2? All that divided by 3 plus 5. Make sure you got all that written on your paper there. Type in the top, what'd you get on top? 50? Anybody else get 50? On bottom? 8? Somebody divide that for us. 50 divided by 8. 6.25, everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes, no, maybe? Do the same thing for the y's, the only thing that's gonna change, what's inside the parentheses? What's our y1 this time? 3, what's our y2? Type in all the top for me. Colton, this is how nice I am. I'll do the bottom for you. Thank you. Such a nice guy. What did anybody get for the top? 27? Somebody divide that for us. 3 point what? 3.4, is that what we're going with? What's our final answer then? What's our x coordinate?
6.25.
And then our y coordinate? Again, does anybody know when you're dividing by 8, what happened on that 3.4 before we go on? It rounded, but I probably wouldn't have rounded it. Because did it still come out sort of even on the calculator?
Yeah.
How many places did it come out? 3 places, didn't it? Anytime you're dividing by 8, guess how many places it's going to go out? 3, unless it ends up being something like this one. Even though we were dividing by 8, this one would have reduced, and the denominator wouldn't have been 8, it would have been 4. And if you're dividing by 4, guess how many places you go out each time? 2. If you're dividing by 16, so let's do this real quick. So if I'm dividing by 2, how many places behind the decimal? 1. If I'm dividing by 4, how many places? 2. If I'm dividing by 8, what did we just say? 3. Guess what happens if you're dividing by 16? 4 places. If you're dividing by 32, guess what happens? 5 places, so on, so on, so on. All right, so all those, how come 2, 4, 8, 16, and 32 are important in the U.S.? Because that's what is split up into. It's what an inch is split up into, in those parts, right? The last one. City planning in the United States Capitol is located at 2, -4 on a coordinate grid. The White House is located at -10, 16 on the same coordinate grid. Find 2 points on the straight line between the United States Capitol and the White House such that the ratio is 1 to 3. Find, why does that say find 2 points? Not sure why that says find 2 points. Does it make sense to anybody that we're going to find 2 points? So for this, where are we starting at? Capitol or the White House? Capitol. So this 2 is our x1, the -4 is our y1, the -10 is our x2, ignore that. The 16 is the y2. Do we need to graph it? We could if we wanted, but it's not really necessary. Which one are we using this time? That one, right? Because this, no, we're using that one, right? So this is our M, that's our N. What's our N this time?
Three.
3. What's our X1?
2.
2. What's our M? 1. What's our X2? Negative what? 10. All that, ignore that mark going up there, all that divided by 1 plus 3. I'll tell you, 4's on the bottom. What's on top? Negative what?
Negative
4. What's negative 4 divided by 4? Negative 1. So that's our X coordinate. For the Y's, everything stays exactly the same. The 3 stays the same there. The 1 stays the same there. The 1 and the 3 on the bottom stay the same. What's our Y1? What's our Y2? 4 on bottom again. Somebody help me out. What's on top? 4? Anybody else get that? What's 4 divided by 4? What's our final answer then? Negative 1, 1. I want to rewrite that because that's ugly. Negative 1, 1 is our final answer. I'm still confused why they said 2 points. And partially, the book's sort of stupid because anybody notice this? What else did they say in there that I told you never to say? Straight line, because all lines are what? So why tell it's a straight line? It's got to be a straight line because all lines are straight. There's no such thing as a crooked line or a curvy line or anything else. Everybody got all that? Make sure your names are on those. You're going to turn them in the tray. If you haven't grabbed the notes, grab the notes. Please make sure your names are on them. Get back to your desk, fill in what you need to fill in on this first part. Why did they just say 1/3? Oh, well, I know what it is, all right? I know what it is, but we didn't do it. They said, they didn't really tell us where to start at, did they? Did they tell us to start at the White House or the other place? No, so we could have found one that was 1/3 going one direction and one that was 1/3 of the way going the other direction. That's why we did. We just started at a certain spot. Because she told me she didn't want to do it twice, right? What? What? Yeah. Fill in what you need to fill in on this. Midpoints and bisectors, a couple more definitions that we're going to be using for the entire year. You've got to know what they are. There you go, Cole. He's not watching it about lawnmowers.
I was gonna ask you if you
He's watching how to. Miles is watching how to jump a truck. He's got some woman showing him how to jump a truck. It would make me feel bad if a woman had to teach me how to jump my truck.
Just go fast on that.
Nothing against you women, but.
Wow.
Right, don't get me in trouble. Let's go tell
You
them.
call me sexist.
Especially since I was recording it, that's probably.
Oh, no.
I shouldn't have pointed that out, because now Cadence, I can see it in her eyes, she's gonna have proof.
You're also gonna hear Jacob saying.
You can delete that though.
I could, but see, that's the bad thing. I don't know how to delete just part of it, so.
Just redo the next one.
They've tried to teach me that several times and I've never been able to do it.
Ask him some
I have, and he's probably, you know what he's gonna tell me? Go watch the video. I'll say, yeah. Midpoint of a segment is a point halfway between the two endpoints. So if I'm looking at some segment NT, the midpoint is the point that's halfway. And we'll call this B right there. If that's the case, what do I know about segment NB and segment BT? They're equal. What's the geometrical word for that?
Equidistant.
They are congruent. So we know that those two segments have to be congruent. Anytime you have a midpoint, the two segments, the original segments being split into, have to be congruent to each other. So if I told you this was 12 centimeters, what do you know about segment BT? It's 12 centimeters. What do you know about segment NT?
It's 24 centimeters.
24 centimeters, good. All right? So all of that just from knowing that point B was a midpoint. Equidistance is another word that this book, it's just a big word that this book likes to use. Equidistance just means what? Equal distance. Nothing hard about that. So B is equal distance from N as it is to T. If we were doing the stuff that we've been doing, the ratio, instead of like 1 to 3, the ratio would be 1 to 1. Because the part on the left, the part on the right are the same as each other. So the ratio would be 1 to 1. On a number line, fill in what you need to fill in on this. Finding a midpoint on a number line. We're not going to do this very often on the number line. Most of the time we'll be on a coordinate system. All right, so that formula, just like the ones that we've been doing, instead of just having X's, the one on the coordinate system is going to have X's and Y's. If you're on a number line, whatever that number line is, so this is our number line, and this is point N, this is point T, and this is, let's say this is 0, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's 8 out there. All you do, take that coordinate plus that coordinate, add them together and divide by 2. Please make sure if you're doing this little formula on a calculator, you've got to do the top first. You can't stick the whole thing into your calculator all as one thing. You've got to do the top first. So if I did this one, grab your calculator, if I did this one, when you do it, this one's not going to work out too bad because it's going to come out the same regardless of how you do it. You can't really screw this one up. Where's the midpoint at? Does that look like it's right in the middle? Yeah, pretty close if my number line was drawn a little better. What's the midpoint of XZ? So let's do this one real quick. It's there on your notes. Somebody help me out. What's the coordinates of point X? Negative 4? Negative 3? Is that what it is?
Yep.
How about Z? 8? Everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
Now, if we're trying to find the midpoint, M, a capital M usually stands for the midpoint. If we're trying to find that midpoint, we're just going to take those two, negative 3 plus 8 divided by 2. Grab your calculator. What's negative 3 plus 8?
2.5.
Remember, do the top. What's the top give you? 5 divided by 2, and you come out with what? 2.5. So let's go out here. 2.5. About right there, right? That's point M. The midpoint, does that look like it's about the same distance on both those sides? So instead of have to go through all of this stuff that we've been going through, a little easier for me. AF, real quickly, somebody help me out, what's coordinates of A? -5, what's coordinates of F? We want to find the midpoint. So -5 plus 7 divided by 2. 1. There. -1, 8. What's on top? 2. On bottom? 2 divided by 2. So 1. We're saying that that point right there, and again, check your answer to just look at it and see if they give you this. You can write in your books. So does that point look like it's about halfway from A as it is from F? Yeah, it looks pretty close. Number line's pretty easy. Nothing hard about this formula. The other midpoint formula for a coordinate system, nothing hard about it either. It's the same thing. You're just going to do this for the X's and for the Y's. Whatever that person's name is works at a vintage clothing store. She wants to hang a new sign so that it is centered above the dressing room doors. Given the dressing room doors have the same width, find the point along the wall that she should use to hang the new sign.
Well, you just subtracted 13.5, but it's 7.5.
All right, so the first thing we're going to do, Sawyer's saying, is take 13.5 minus 7.5. What's that give you? So what's 6? That's what. What's 6? Explain to me.
The other half. It's the distance of both doors.
It's the distance of the 2 doors. That's how wide the doors is right here, right? Everybody agree with that? Now, the bad thing is if we do it that way, and we could do it that way, then we know that if she was to measure from here, how far over does she need to be right in the middle? 3. The bad thing is she started at 0 over here and went that direction, so we can't really change her number line because it's already there. So we need to start from 0. So we know we need to go over 3 more spaces from right here. Everybody understand that? So what point are we going to be at on this whole number line? 10.5. Does everybody agree with that? So how far should she measure from her wall over here over to there? 10.5 feet. Are there many, many other ways? I just went with what Sawyer started. Are there many other ways you could have done that instead of doing it that way? Probably. The way the book probably wanted you to do it was you had this point. What was the coordinate of that point right there? 7.5. Plus, what's the coordinates of this point, the other side of the doors? 13.5. And then divide that by 2 by using that little formula that we just had. Somebody do that. What's 7.5 plus 13.5? And then divide that by 2, what do you end up with?
10.5.
That's probably the way the book wanted you to do it, was using their little formula. You can think it through and do it your own way. I don't have any problem with that as long as the answer's coming out correct. The answer you cannot have here is 3. It's gonna be 3 feet from the edge of the door, but it's not 3 feet from the wall, and that's where they want this to be from. Temperature at 11 a.m. And 8 p.m. are shown below. Find the midpoint of these temperatures. What was the temperature at 11 a.m.? 20 degrees, whatever the degrees are. It's in Celsius, I guess. Be careful. What's the temperature at 8 p.m.? What's our thermometers go by here? 2s. So if we're at 0 right here, sorry, I probably shouldn't have scribbled that in so much. If we're at 0 right there, -6, everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
So this is 20 degrees, this is -6 degrees. We're gonna do the same thing to find that midpoint. Our first one is 20 plus, our second one is -6 divided by 2. What's that give us? 14, then divide that by 2. So we're saying that the midpoint is 7 degrees. So if I go to 7, let's see, that's 10, that's 8. 7 would have to be like right in the middle of those two right there. Everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
Does that look like about the midpoint from here to here? Yeah, it looks pretty close, if I could draw straight. Make sure, again, look at your, whatever kind of graph it is, thermometer, whatever it is, make sure you know what they're going by. This time they were going by 2s. Fill in what you need to fill in on this one. This is probably a little more important than the other one because now we're on the coordinate system. Meadow, did we say the other day that I was just gonna scream every now and then to keep you? We didn't say that. Oh, we said that. A different class. Miles is laughing because he knows it's gonna happen at some point. He's trying to stay focused so when I do it, he doesn't look scared. Jake, did I ever scare you last year by screaming?
No. I'm hard to frighten.
What?
I said I'm hard to frighten in the rules.
With the midpoint formula, and I'm gonna write the midpoint formula over here as I explain it. Notice the distance formula, it's up here on the board, it's gonna stay here probably the whole year. Midpoint formula will stay here the whole year probably also. I'm gonna write midpoint. And it's this. Notice with distance formula, it's only got that part because I didn't put the D out in front of it. That's what's on the other side of the equal sign. This one, we're actually gonna have both parts of the, or both sides of the equal sign. This is X sub M, comma, Y sub M. Anybody have any ideas what that stands for? Sorta. It's X for the what? Midpoint, and Y for the midpoint. So this is just telling you, this is your answer, and these are the coordinates for the midpoint of our segment. Then on the other side, X sub 2, not X squared, X sub 2 plus X sub 1 divided by 2, comma, Y sub 2 plus Y sub 1 divided by 2. Same thing as with the distance formula. Order don't matter. So the order that you put the X's and the Y's in make absolutely no difference. You're still gonna get the same answer. The difference with the distance formula in this, with the distance formula, how many answers are you getting? With the midpoint formula, you're getting 2 answers. So make sure you don't mess that up. Last year I had a lot of students doing this. They'd get this answer for their midpoint, and then they'd go one step farther and put this as their answer. Anybody have a guess what they were doing? They were adding them together. Don't do that.
First answer.
All right, the first one, that right there is your midpoint.
So whenever we do get that, do you want us to put like 5 in for the midpoint?
All you do, if
5.
you're just getting your answer, if that's your answer, that's what you write down. Yes, 1 second. Yes. No. Yeah, are they gonna, will they be here 15 minutes from now? Or not? All right, yeah. All right, Miles, get up here.
What?
So, we're gonna find midpoints. All you're gonna do, you take your 2 x coordinates, add them together, divide by 2, take your 2 y coordinates, add them together, divide by 2. Do we really need to graph this? No, if it helps you to graph it, graph it. If not, then don't. So every time, what we're gonna do, all we really need is this second part. We don't really need that first part. That's gonna be our answer unless we're dealing with that, and we'll talk about that here in a little while. The -2 here, is that our x1 or our x2?
That's one.
This is
I will.
y1. I'm not sure why I'm writing with that pen. That's x1, that's y1, that's x2, that's y2. Each time it's going to be divided by 2. That doesn't change. Don't get confused. These are always pluses. These are always pluses. What's our x's this time?
-2 then.
So -2 plus 8. What's our y's?
1 and 3.
1 and 3. Miles is going to finish it out for you. Do the x first, write down that answer. Do the y second, write down that answer. That's going to be your midpoint.
You're welcome.
Did the work, Miles?
Come on, Miles,
Go.
let's go. Miles, teach me
You've been in this
something.
class before.
Miles, when you get done with that one, go on to the next one.
You've already passed this class.
Do it.
Am I supposed to take answers from you guys?
I did.
Drew, you gotta help me with this.
Drew,
I gotta
help
be a mean younger brother.
Do I have to help you?
How do I do this? Help me, Drew.
You taught it already.
Like, is this right?
You're the teacher now.
I don't know what I'm doing.
This is supposed to be disappointed.
Yeah, man.
That's not right.
Is it positive 6/2?
It's positive
Yeah.
6/2.
That's the piece. That would do that. Okay.
Yeah, but
That's one answer. Yeah. 3 over 2 is the answer. Or 3. What?
I'd rather even read that.
that's it.
3 over 2. 3. Yeah. Okay. How do I go to the next one?
Click the button.
But,
On
This button?
yes. Oh, that's it.
Click one of the buttons.
Good job.
somewhere.
Yeah, bagging something. 4.5.
Miles, are you a student in this class or are you an aide?
I'm an
He's aiding for a math teacher, but doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
You didn't sign up for this, did you?
Okay, what's that one?
Negative
Point five,
0.5.
Negative 0.5. That's a 5.
Oh, Miles is a lefty.
He's doing a great job, Mr. Ebersole.
He did great.
Were you making fun of him, Drew?
Yes.
Yes. There you go.
Find the coordinates of M, so we're trying to find the midpoint this time, right?
Yeah.
Find the coordinates of M, give them those 2 points. Again, could we graph it if we wanted?
Yeah.
Maybe Jalen wants to graph it and just sort of guess and see where the midpoints is. If she doesn't, I would rather see that. If she doesn't understand the formula, go right ahead, do something. For this, not sure what that is.
4.5.
This is x1, that's y1, that's x2, that's y2. Everybody agree with all that?
Yeah.
What's my x's this time?
Oh, you're asking for the answer.
No,
Negative
what?
6.
-6 plus 5. Divide by 2, what's my y's?
2 and 7.
2 plus 7 divided by 2. Somebody help me out. -6 plus 5 is what? -1. -1 divided by 2.
Negative 0.5.
-0.5. I accept that. Also, -1/2 would work. 2 plus 7. 9. 9 divided by 2. 4.5. So where's our midpoint at?
Negative 10.5 and
Is it all right for the midpoint to be something with decimals and stuff in it? Yeah, nothing wrong with that. We're gonna skip this one since I had to. This one's a little harder. Find this one on your notes. A little tougher. I think it's like the very last one, maybe.
Yeah.
Or last one, sort of. Says, find the coordinates of Q if R is 6, -1, and the midpoint of QS, the midpoint of segment QS, and S has coordinates of 12, 4. So, I'm gonna go ahead and draw this and see. That's 12, 4, and 6, -1, so I probably need more space to the right over there, so I'm gonna draw something like this maybe. So R is 6, -1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -1. That's R. Probably didn't draw this correctly, where I should have. S is 12, 4. That's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I know I didn't draw it right now. So that's S. It says find the coordinates of Q if R, so this is your midpoint. So they're giving us the midpoint this time. So that there is your midpoint. So my segment, are we gonna find a point in here somewhere? No, that is the midpoint, so the segment's actually gonna run something maybe down in there somewhere, and we're looking for that point down there so that R is the midpoint. Does that make sense? So this is where we gotta use this whole formula. All right? So I'm gonna write X sub M, Y sub M equals X sub 1 plus, I'm just writing out the formula. X sub 2 divided by 2, comma, Y sub 1 plus Y sub 2 divided by 2. Do I know the X coordinate for the midpoint? What is it?
Yes.
That's right here, isn't it? That's XM right there. If I could draw it, this is YM. This is X1, that's Y1. What we don't know is the X2 and the Y2, but I'm gonna stick in all the numbers that I do know here. What's XM? What's YM? Don't make this harder than it is. Sorry, I'm messing up there. That's supposed to be an equal sign in there. What's X1 this time? 12 plus, what's X2?
No, X.
We don't know, do we? So I'm just gonna make it X. It doesn't matter which X it is, really. What's Y1?
4.
What's Y2? We don't know. So just leave it as a Y. Now, this doesn't make much sense as an equation. I'm sure in algebra last year, you never did any equations that had all those commas and parentheses and all that crap in it, right? So what you have to do here is you have to separate it. I know that this 6 goes with which part over here? That part right there. So I'm gonna say 6 equals 12 plus X divided by 2. Did that make sense? So you're separating off the X part here, the X part there. Now I'm gonna come over here, I'm gonna do the same thing. Before I solve that, I'm gonna do the same thing for the Y part. So what's our Y part over here? -1, even though you can't probably read mine. What's the Y part on this side? 4 plus Y divided by 2. This is the one we should add miles explain. Anybody think they can solve this first equation? You got this big fraction here, what's the very first thing you do? You want to get rid of it, right? So if you're dividing by 2, you want to multiply both sides by 2. So I'm multiplying over here by 2, I'm multiplying over here by 2. What happens with the 2's on the right? They just cancel out, that's the whole purpose. What's left on the right? 12 plus X. On this side, 2 times 6 is? Anything hard so far? Don't make this harder than it is, you just gotta know to separate it out. How do I solve for X now? Minus 12, minus 12. These cancel out. What's 12 minus 12? So what's the X coordinate of the point that we're looking for? 0. What's the first thing I do on this side to solve? Multiply by 2, multiply by 2. What's 2 times -1? These cancel out. Oops, ignore that. You're left with 4 plus Y. Now what? How do you get Y by itself? Minus 4, minus 4. Y, these cancel out. What's Y equal? So what point is our other endpoint? 0, -6. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the point we were looking for. Most of the time on midpoint formula, most of the time, you're just going to be finding the midpoint. But should you be able to find one of the endpoints, like we just did on this one, if they don't give it to you? So you're just using the formula, use it backwards. Most of the time, you're just going to use that part of the formula. Fill in what you need to fill in on this, quickly. We still got 4 minutes left. Segment bisector, segment bisector. Bisects a segment. Anybody have a guess what bisects means? Splits it into 2 parts, all right? 2 equal parts, 2 congruent parts. So a segment bisector. We're going to talk about other bisectors throughout the year, but segment bisector is the one that we're dealing with right now. Segment bisector splits a segment into two equal or two congruent parts. So that point where that segment's being split is also called the midpoint of that segment. So just another term, bisector, segment bisector. Know what it means? It means it splits a segment into two congruent segments. I'm gonna have time to do that. Page 55, that's your assignment. 13 through 47, the odd numbers, 54, 55, and 57. It's on your notes there. So Drew, next time, should I just tell you to take over and not ask Miles?
Yes.
Hey, where's your bad mouth? Did you like that, Miles?
He didn't know what he was doing.
His handwriting was bad.
He just didn't know what he was doing.
That's good luck.
Okay.
Just wonderful.
He's aiming for a mouth kick. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's landing on
So good.
Thursday night, Jersey's the only one. A little.
People who like geometry.
Guess how many games?
One person on the Zoom comes in for like
Hey, yes, oh no, I think of some people who like just take it multiple times.
I was just thinking about five games. See, and they had the same professional leader, and it came back.
Came back with it.
Yeah. They put around, they were putting them in fight. They were like, that's not why.
That's not.
They were listening.
Oh, yeah, that's.
That's also a little painting.
Yeah, no.
On the back.
That's for people in.
You really don't get hit very often.
Find the measure of segment RT if T is the midpoint of segment RQ. So all we're going to do here, we know T is the midpoint. That means these two segments have to be congruent. So we're going to set up an equation. This part has to equal that part. So 2x plus 3 has to equal 4x minus 5. Solve this. Subtract 2x on both sides. These cancel out, you're left with 3 equals 4x minus 2x is 2x minus 5. Add 5 to both sides. Please remember in that first step, you're always trying to get all the x's on one side first. Add 5 on both sides, that's 8 over here. 2x, divide by 2, divide by 2, you end up with x equals, those cancel out, 4. Go back and read the problem, make sure you know what they say. They say find the measure of segment RT. RT is this segment right here. So we go back and we just plug in 2x is 4, and you do the math. 2 times 4 is 8, then 8 plus 3, that's 11. So segment RT, the length of segment RT is 11. That's our answer. Again, this is a midpoint. T also, not only is it a midpoint, but it also is a segment bisector. It bisects the segment into two congruent parts. Find the measure of segment RS if S bisects segment RQ. So they're telling us that S bisects it, so that means these two segments have to be congruent. We also know that S is the midpoint of the segment. We're going to do the same thing, set up an equation. This has to equal that. So 7x minus 5 has to equal 6x plus 4. Subtract 6x on both sides. End up with just x minus 5, and draw my bars in there, equals, these cancel out, equals 4. Add 5 on both sides, you end up with x equals 9. They said find the measure of segment RS. RS is this segment. So we're going to plug in 9 for x, so 7 times 9 minus 5. 7 times 9 is 63. Minus 5 is 58. So segment RS has a length of 58. Find the measure of segment AC if B is the midpoint. Same idea. So we have that. We know that these two are going to be congruent to each other if B is the midpoint, so 5x minus 3 has to equal 2x plus 9. Subtract 2x on both sides. End up with 3x minus 3 equals 9. Add 3 on both sides. End up with 3x equals 12. Divide by 3. And you end up with x equals 4. This problem was on a test. Get a point for setting up the equation. Get a point for finding x. Get another point for actually answering the question, which was the length of segment AC. Well, AC this time is this whole thing. So we want to find that length. Whenever you're plugging in here, make it as easy as possible on yourself. I'm going to pick this one right here to plug into because it's 5 times 4, and I know my multiples of 5 pretty well. 5 times 4 is 20. 20 minus 3 is 17. But 17 is not our answer this time. That's this part. But if this part's 17, then that means this part over here also has to be 17. So I just have to add those together. 17 plus 17, and I get that segment AC, the whole thing there, is 34 units, whatever the units are. All right, what we're going to do as many problems as we can together. We'll do that on the next slides, so do as many as we can, and then this is your assignment, and we're going to do as many of them together as we possibly can and get them done.